I'm Ava Montrose, 32, and I was buried to my elbows inside a dumpster behind a repossessed mansion when a woman in a tailored designer suit appeared. "Excuse me. Are you Ava Montrose?" she asked politely. I froze, gripping the broken leg of a vintage chair, my palms streaked with grime. While my ex-husband's voice from 3 months earlier echoed in my mind, "No one will ever want a penniless, homeless woman like you." Right. Perfect soundtrack for my glamorous life. Nothing screams architectural prodigy like sorting through garbage at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, appraising scraps for resale potential. I climbed out, wiped my hands on filthy jeans, and said dryly, "That's me. If you're here to repossess something, this chair leg is literally my entire net worth." She smiled. "My name is Violet Park. I represent the estate of Edmund Montrose." My heartbeat stopped. Uncle Edmund, the man who'd raised me after my parents died, the man who had ignited my passion for architecture and then disowned me when I chose marriage over ambition 10 years ago. "Your great-uncle passed away 6 weeks ago." Violet continued evenly. "He left you everything. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments and hit like and subscribe if life has ever thrown you an unexpected curveball right after rock bottom." 3 months ago, I'd still been middle-class house, husband, and an unused degree in architecture. Damien Cole, my then-husband, insisted work was unnecessary. "I make enough for both of us," he used to say in a tone that sounded protective but felt possessive. When I discovered his affair with his secretary, my carefully curated world imploded. The divorce was vicious. Damien hired top lawyers. I had a legal aid volunteer and stubborn hope. He walked away with the house, the cars, the savings. I walked away with a single suitcase and the knowledge that our prenup was airtight. His parting gift: "Good luck finding anyone who wants damaged goods." Since then, I'd survived by diving through dumpsters for discarded furniture, restoring pieces in a rented storage unit, and selling them online. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Violet gestured toward a sleek black Mercedes. "Perhaps we could talk somewhere more comfortable." I glanced down at myself. "I'm not exactly Mercedes ready. You're the sole heir to a $50 million estate," she said calmly. "The car can handle a little dust. 50 million. The number refused to compute. I followed her, dazed, into the car. While we drove, she handed me a folder. "Your uncle left you his Boston residence, his Ferrari collection, multiple investment properties, and the controlling interest in Montrose Atelier. The firm's valuation is roughly 47 million. I stared at photos of the mansion I'd once seen in Architectural Digest Montrose House. Uncle Edmund's masterpiece, a 5-story brownstone fusing Victorian grace with sleek modern innovation. There must be a mistake. I whispered. He disowned me 10 years ago. Violet's expression softened. "Mr. Montrose never amended his will. You've always been his sole beneficiary. However, there is one condition." "Of course there is. What is it?" "You must assume the role of CEO at Montrose Atelier within 30 days and hold that position for at least 1 year. If you decline or fail, everything transfers to the American Institute of Architects." I laughed bitterly. I've never worked a single day as an architect. I graduated at 21, married at 22. My husband thought my education was a cute hobby. "Mr. Montrose hoped you'd find your way back to architecture," Violet said softly. "This is his way of giving you that chance." The car stopped before a boutique hotel. "You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow we fly to Boston to meet the firm's board. You have 29 days to decide." I looked down at the folder, the life I'd abandoned for a man who'd discarded me. The life Uncle Edmund had always wanted me to claim. "I'll do it," I said quietly. When do we leave? Violet smiled. 8 a.m. Pack light, everything you need will be waiting. I glanced at the trash bag in the trunk that held all my worldly possessions. Trust me. Packing light won't be an issue. The hotel room was nicer than anywhere I'd stayed in months. Scrubbing the grime from beneath my nails, I caught my reflection, hollow cheeks, tired eyes, hair in desperate need of care. This was what Damien had reduced me to. My mind drifted back to being 21. Final year of architecture school. Damien, then 32. Successful. Magnetic had walked into my exhibit where my sustainable community center design had taken first place. Uncle Edmund had been radiant with pride. You're going to change the world, he'd told me. Next year you'll join my firm. We'll make history together. Damien overheard, introduced himself, praised my work, and asked me to dinner. Within 6 months we were engaged. Within 8, married. Uncle Edmund refused to attend. You're making a mistake, he warned over the phone. That man doesn't want a partner, he wants a trophy. You're locking yourself in a cage. I'd been furious, young, stupidly in love. You're just jealous because I'm choosing my own path. No, he'd said sadly. I'm heartbroken because you're throwing away everything you've earned. But you're an adult. It's your life to waste. We never spoke again. Not after my Christmas cards. Not when I called for his 80th birthday. Not when I needed him most. Damien's control had started subtly suggesting I skip job applications, take time to settle into marriage, then discouraging the licensing exam. Why stress yourself when I tried freelancing from home? Had to plan surprise trips, making deadlines impossible. Eventually I stopped trying. My single act of rebellion was continuing education, online courses, architectural journals, endless notes. Whenever Damien traveled, I filled notebooks with unbuilt designs and unrealized projects, dreams that lived only on paper. He found them once. That's a cute hobby, he said dismissively. But focus on keeping the house perfect. The Johnsons are coming for dinner. I ordered room service, the first real meal in days, and searched Montrose Atelier online. The website glowed with elegance: museums, hotels, residences. Every one a testament to Edmond Montrose's genius. His biography showed him silver-haired and dignified, standing before the Portland Museum of Modern Art. The caption read that he was preceded in death by his wife, Evelyn Montrose, and had no children. But I had once been like a daughter. After my parents died when I was 15, Uncle Edmund had taken me in, nurtured my obsession with architecture, brought me to construction sites, taught me to see buildings as living organisms. He paid for my education, believed in my gift, and I had thrown it away for a man who never even asked what my thesis had been about. My phone buzzed. Car picks you up at 8:20 a.m. Bring everything you own. You won't be coming back. I looked at the garbage bag, one suitcase of clothes, a laptop, 17 notebooks filled with a decade of designs. That was my entire life. I spent the night rereading them, watching my own evolution. Early sketches mirrored Uncle Edmund's style. But over the years I had found my own voice: sustainability interwoven with classic symmetry. Structures that felt both eternal and forward-thinking. Damien's opinion no longer mattered. It never truly had. At 8 a.m., I stood in the lobby, trash bag in hand, head held high. Violet waited in the car. Sleep well, she asked. Better than I have in months. So, what happens in Boston first? Montrose House. Then you're meeting with the board at 2 p.m. They expect you to decline. Most have been maneuvering to buy pieces of the firm. Why would they think I'd decline? Violet smiled. Because you've never worked in the field. Most people would be terrified. Good thing. I'm not most people. And for the record, I know architecture. I just never got to practice it. As we boarded a private jet, the absurdity hit me yesterday, a dumpster. Today, first class. Tomorrow, running a multi-million-dollar company. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. The Boston skyline gleamed beneath us as we descended. I'd never been here. Damien had hated big cities, preferring quiet suburbs where control was easier. The car wound through tree-lined streets until we stopped mid-block before Montrose House, 5 stories of Victorian facade blended with modern innovation. Solar panels hidden within roof tiles. Smart glass windows. Manicured gardens. Welcome home. Violet said, "Have you ever had a moment when your entire life pivoted on a single breath? Share it below because years later?" I'm still processing mine. A woman in her 60s opened the door with a warm smile. "Miss Montrose, I'm Helen Whitmore. I worked for your uncle 30 years and looked after you after your parents passed. You may not remember. You were so young, so lost, but he never forgot you. I did remember a kind woman who made sure I ate, who found me sobbing in Edmund's study. Helen," I said, embracing her. "Thank you for everything back then. Welcome home. Dear girl, your uncle never stopped believing you'd return." Inside took my breath away, original crown molding juxtaposed with clean modern lines. Art on every wall. Furniture that belonged in a museum yet felt lived in. This wasn't a house. It was a manifesto of what architecture could be. "Your uncle's suite is on the 4th floor," Helen said as we climbed, "but he converted the 5th floor into a studio for you 8 years ago." I stopped. 8 years, but we weren't even speaking. She gave a sad smile. "Mr. Montrose always believed you'd come back. He said you were too talented to stay buried. He kept the space ready." The 5th floor was a designer's dream, wall-to-wall windows, expansive drafting tables, top-tier computers, drawers overflowing with supplies. On one wall hung my college exhibition sketch, pinned neatly to a corkboard. I touched it, tears blurring my vision. Uncle Edmund had kept it all these years. "He was very proud of you," Helen said softly. "He told me once your talent was wasted, but not lost, that you'd find your way back." Violet appeared at the doorway. "The board meeting is in an hour. Would you like to change, Miss Whitmore?" Had clothing delivered. In the bedroom, I discovered a closet full of impeccably tailored suits. I chose a navy blue one that made me feel like the architect I had never been allowed to be. Downstairs, a man in his late 30s stood beside Violet, tall, dark-haired with a trace of gray, eyes sharp yet kind. "Ava Montrose," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Lucas Grant, senior partner at Montrose Atelier. I worked with your uncle for 12 years. The Lucas Grant. The Portland Public Library expansion was yours." His eyebrows lifted. "You know my work. I know everyone's work. I might not have practiced, but I never stopped studying. Your expansion used biophilic design principles. Most architects overlook it. Was brilliant." Something in his gaze shifted. "Then you're not just Edmund's charity case." "Good. The board will test you fast." "Lucas," Violet cautioned. "No, he's right," I said. "They expect me to fail. Uncle Edmund knew that too." Lucas smiled faintly. "He said you were brilliant but beaten down, and that the woman who walked into that boardroom would prove whether you'd survived intact." I thought of Damien, of dumpsters, of the untouched studio Edmund had kept waiting. Then let's not keep them waiting. Montrose Atelier occupied 3 gleaming floors in Back Bay. Heads turned as we entered. In the conference room, 8 executives stared as though I'd intruded. "Ladies and gentlemen," Violet announced, "this is Ava Montrose, Edmund Montrose's great niece and the firm's incoming CEO. A gray-haired man leaned back. With respect, Miss Montrose has never worked a day in this industry. Edmund clearly wasn't thinking straight. Actually, Mr. Caldwell, I said evenly. My uncle was thinking crystal clear. He knew this firm needed new vision. Not the same old guard clinging to former glory. I opened a notebook. This is a sustainable mixed-use development. I designed 3 years ago rain gardens, green roofs, passive solar systems. I have 16 more notebooks like it, 10 years of designs created in secret because my ex-husband thought architecture was a cute hobby. Caldwell flipped through it, unimpressed. But others leaned closer. A woman spoke. Even if your designs are solid, running a firm requires business sense and client management. You're right. I agreed. That's why I'll lean on the existing leadership, especially Lucas. I'm not pretending to know everything. I'm here to learn, lead, and honor my uncle's legacy while bringing fresh ideas. If anyone can't handle moving forward instead of settling for safe mediocrity, you're free to leave. Violet slid out revised contracts. Those who stay sign new terms. Those who don't can collect severance. You have until end of business today. When the meeting dissolved, Lucas approached. That was impressive. He said, "You made enemies of half the board, but the half that matters respects you." Did I make an enemy of you? Edmund told me last year that if anything happened, I should help you succeed. He said you'd been buried alive too long, and when you broke through, you'd be unstoppable. He was right. I looked toward the Boston skyline. He usually was, though his taste in board members could use work. Caldwell looks like he eats kittens for breakfast. Lucas laughed. You'll do fine here. My first week was a crash course in everything I'd missed. Lucas shadowed me guiding projects, introducing clients, explaining office politics. It felt like coming home to a place I'd never lived. Your uncle's management style was unique. Lucas explained in my new office, now cleaned, except for his cherished pieces, a 1970s drafting table worn smooth, a leather chair faintly scented of his cologne, models of his famous buildings. Let me guess. I said, terrifying, brilliant, impossible to please, close. Lucas chuckled. He demanded excellence, but gave freedom. He'd rather see spectacular failure than safe mediocrity. I understood. Edmund had been the same when teaching me. My computer pinged an email from Caldwell to all senior staff effective immediately. All design decisions require board approval before client presentation. I looked at Lucas. That's not how Uncle Edmund ran things. No. He trusted his architects. Caldwell's undermining you. I hit reply. All this policy is rejected. Montrose Atelier has thrived because it trusts its designers' expertise. Board approval is required only for projects exceeding $10 million. Per company charter. Send. Lucas raised his eyebrows. You just made him look foolish. Good. Damien spent 10 years making me question every choice. I'm done asking permission. Minutes later, Caldwell requested a private meeting. I agreed, Lucas beside me. Caldwell entered. Cold. Miss Montrose, I'm protecting this company's reputation by bypassing protocol and undermining the CEO bold move. Your uncle left me 30% of this firm. I've been here 23 years. I won't watch you destroy it. I leaned back in Edmund's chair. Let's be clear. He left me controlling interest. Work with me or against me. But if you choose the latter, you'll lose. Take the weekend to decide which option serves you better. After he stormed out, Lucas whistled. Where did that come from? I smiled. Hands trembling. From 3 months of eating out of trash bins and deciding I'd rather fail on my own terms. Also, Ibinga watched Succession. Picked up a few lessons. That evening, Wandering Edmund's office. I discovered folders labeled with my name, year by year. My undergraduate work. Clippings about my wedding. Photos of my forced smiles. The most recent held articles on my divorce, and court filings showing how thoroughly I'd been ruined. Beneath them lay a letter in Edmund's neat handwriting. Dated 2 months before he died, Ava. If you're reading this, it means you finally came home. I'm sorry for my stubbornness. I should have called 1,000 times. But pride stopped me. I watched you shrink year after year. I wanted to intervene. But Helen convinced me you had to choose freedom yourself. She was right. This company was always meant for you since the moment you moved in at 15 and studied my blueprints. Not because you're family, but because you're brilliant. The drawer was locked, but a key had been taped beneath it. Inside lay 17 leather portfolios, each labeled by year. They held Edmund's early concepts, his real working sketches, not glossy final drawings but the messy truth of process false starts. Revisions. Marginal notes about what functioned and what failed. Each portfolio captured a year of his growth. It felt like holding architectural history. A note tucked into the most recent volume broke me open. These are my failures, my misfires, terrible notions that matured into good ones. I'm giving you this because young architects must see that even legends struggled. Use these to teach, to inspire, to remind yourself that brilliance never arrives fully formed. It is built one imperfect drawing at a time, just as you are rebuilding yourself now. Love. E. By morning. A plan had taken shape. When Lucas arrived, I was sketching at a furious pace. "What are you working on?" he asked. "A mentorship track. The Montrose Fellowship will bring in architecture students from diverse backgrounds. We'll show them these portfolios, let them study Edmund's process. Real project exposure. Paid placements. Actual responsibility." Lucas examined the pages. "That's costly and time-consuming," he said. "That's the point. We're not only erecting structures, we're cultivating the next generation. Edmund would have loved that. He would." Lucas agreed softly. "You're not trying to become Edmund. You're becoming exactly who he hoped you'd be." I looked up at him. "Thank you for not acting like I have to prove myself every second. You proved yourself on day one," he said. "Everything since has merely confirmed it." My phone buzzed unknown number. I opened the message and froze. "Congratulations on the inheritance. Looks like you landed on your feet. We should talk." Damian. He had seen the Architectural Digest piece announcing my appointment. Typical. I showed Lucas, whose expression darkened. "Want me to handle it?" he asked. I stared at Damian's clumsy attempt to slither back, now that money was involved, and felt only remote pity. "No," I said, deleting and blocking. "He doesn't deserve oxygen. He's already fading out of my story." And it was true. Damian had become irrelevant, just a footnote in a far better narrative. The Harrington Project was my first major client presentation as CEO. A tech billionaire wanted a cutting-edge Portland headquarters sustainable and iconic, the precise blend Montrose Atelier was known for. I had spent 3 weeks refining the scheme with our engineers, a living building with a green roof, rainwater capture, and smart glass regulating light and heat. Lucas called it exceptional. Edmund would have been proud. The presentation was set for 10 o'clock a.m. I arrived to discover my laptop missing. The physical models sat ready, but the computer with the deck was gone. Looking for this, Graham Caldwell leaned in the doorway. My laptop in hand. "Found it in the break room. Someone must have moved it." Right, and I am the Queen of England. I had no time to spar. I opened the laptop and cued the deck. It loaded normally until I connected to the projector. My stomach plunged. The file was corrupted, slides scrambled. Images missing. renderings replaced with error screens. Everything okay? Lucas asked. Entering with the clients, I had 30 seconds panic. Postpone. Concede defeat, or do what Edmund would have done. Actually, I said, closing the laptop with a smile. Let's do this another way. Mr. Harrington, you said you wanted a building that tells a story. Let me tell you that story. I moved to the whiteboard and began to draw. My hand steady with a confidence honed over 10 years on paper. I sketched the silhouette, explained how the form grew from the landscape, how every angle had purpose. Traditional practice treats buildings like static artifacts. I said, adding sections and details, but your headquarters will be dynamic alive. I drew arrows for airflow, paths for water, seasonal sun angles. In summer, the smart glass darkens automatically. In winter, it opens to maximize passive solar gain. Harrington leaned forward, eyes bright. I kept drawing, kept narrating, justifying every choice. Lucas passed me colored markers, and I layered depth, shadow, vitality. After 45 minutes, the board was a complete, hand-drawn articulation of the vision raw. Truthful, unmistakably passionate. Harrington stood, studied the whiteboard, and nodded. This is exactly what I wanted, someone who understands buildings as living systems. When can you start? They left with terms agreed on the spot. And I finally exhaled. That was extraordinary. Lucas grinned. Someone sabotaged me. I said, those files were corrupted. I know. Caldwell borrowed your laptop yesterday, said he needed to review timelines. It doesn't matter. He wanted me to fail. Instead, we showed everyone that I don't need glossy slides. The work speaks. That evening I called an emergency board session with Violet as counsel. I want to address what happened this morning. I began. My files were deliberately corrupted to undermine my credibility. Caldwell shifted in his chair. That's a serious allegation. It is, which is why I traced the edits. They originated from your machine yesterday at 6:47 p.m. Silence. I was reviewing documents, he muttered. If something was changed accidentally, there was nothing accidental about corrupting every backup. Lucas said, voice like ice. I was testing her. Caldwell snapped. Edmund left this firm to an untested amateur. I laughed. You wanted to see if I'd crumble. Mr. Caldwell, I spent 3 months living out of a storage unit, diving dumpsters to sell furniture for food. Your file games don't even register. But sabotaging company interests for ego makes you a liability. I stood. Here's what happens next. You will resign immediately. In return, the company will buy your 30% stake at fair market value, and you will sign a non-disparagement agreement, or I file formal complaints that will involve attorneys and ruin your reputation. Your choice. You have until close of business tomorrow. Afterward, Lucas found me at the window. You handled that perfectly. Did I? Part of me wanted to fire him on the spot, but giving him a dignified exit removes the threat without a public brawl. That's better leadership. Edmund used to say, a leader isn't measured by the easy wins, but by how she handles the people who try to tear her down. I turned to him. Why are you really helping me? You could have taken this company yourself. He was quiet. Edmund asked me to help. Yes, but I'm not doing this out of obligation. In 1 month, you've already changed the culture, the fellowship, the way you speak with junior staff, the way you treat buildings as living beings. You're bringing the passion back. He hesitated, and I watched your improvised presentation, the way you drew, the way your whole body spoke. That wasn't performance. That was a person who'd been suffocating and finally learned to breathe. There was a timbre in his voice that made my heart lurch. This wasn't only professional respect. Lucas one began, but he raised a hand. I won't complicate things. You just left a terrible marriage. You're rebuilding. I only wanted you to know I see you the real you, and she's remarkable. He left before I could answer. Caldwell resigned the next morning. The firm bought his shares and redistributed them among the remaining board and key staff. The biggest obstacle to my leadership vanished. I suspected the real tests were only beginning. 2 weeks later. Helen Whitmore discovered a leather-bound journal tucked behind Edmund's monographs. Miss Montrose, you should read this, she said. Your uncle kept a diary, many entries about you. The journal spanned 15 years from when I first lived with him to weeks before his death. The pages about my marriage stopped me cold. March 15th. 10 years ago, I've married Damien Cole today. I refuse to attend. Helen says I'm being stubborn and unkind. Perhaps, but I cannot watch someone. I raised Walk willingly into a cage. I told her he was controlling. She chose him anyway. All I can do is wait and hope she finds her way home. December 8th. 9 years ago. Heard through acquaintances Ava isn't working. Damien won't allow it. My brilliant girl is fading in suburban silence. I want to call. Helen insists Ava must realize it herself, that my interference would only make her defensive. I hate that she's right. July 22nd. 8 years ago. Began building the 5th floor studio today. Helen thinks I'm foolish, preparing a space for someone who may never return. I must believe she will. The studio is my act of faith. April 8th. 5 years ago. Saw Ava at a charity gala. Damien kept a hand at her back all night. Steering her. She looked thin. Tired. Smile brittle. I wanted to speak. But she avoided my eyes. I do not think she even notices the diminishing of herself. January 30th. 3 years ago. Heard Damien is having an affair. Everyone knows except Ava. Part of me wants to tell her. But Helen is right, she must discover it. If I tell her, she may try to salvage the marriage out of pride. November 11th. 2 years ago. Reviewed my will. Everything still goes to Ava. Contingent on her running the firm for at least 1 year. Lucas thinks I'm manipulative. Perhaps. But this company was always meant for her since she was 15, and I found her sketching my buildings. She has the gift. She only needs to remember. September 4th. 1 year ago. Doctor says I may have 6 months. I have made peace with dying. I cannot accept the idea that Ava might spend her life in that prison of a marriage. All I can do is leave her the tools to rebuild when she is ready. December 20th. 6 months ago. Ava filed for divorce. Thank God. The road will be brutal. But she is stronger than she knows. March 8th. 8 weeks ago. I am dying faster than expected. Pain is considerable. But I am content. Violet has instructions to find Ava when I am gone. The rest is up to her. She will either accept the challenge or choose another path. Either way, she will be free. That is all I ever wanted. Love always. Edmund. I sat in his study with tears pouring, washed in grief and gratitude for a man who built a studio 8 years before. I would need it just in case. He loved you very much. Helen murmured. Everything he did came from that love. He worried that pushing too hard would drive you away. So he waited and prepared this place for your return. I wasted so much time. I whispered. No, you learned what you needed to learn. Edmund understood. That night, I called Lucas. Can you come to Montrose house? I need to talk. He arrived within an hour. I handed him the journal. He read silently, then looked at me with care. How are you feeling, Scene? Edmund knew me better than I knew myself. Lucas stepped closer. For what it's worth, he was right. The woman who walked into that boardroom could not have existed without everything you endured. He mentioned you. I said, Said you'd help me. That you'd understand his intentions. I didn't know about the journal. Lucas admitted. But yes, about a year before he died, he talked to me about you. He said his brilliant niece was wasting her life. And when she finally got free, she would need someone who wouldn't try to control her. He asked me to promise I'd support you. Is that why you're so kind, obligation? It started there. He said, but, Ava, I stopped doing this for Edmund weeks ago. I'm doing it because every day I watch you become more yourself. That isn't obligation. That's admiration. He took my hand with care. And, if I'm completely honest, it's more than admiration. But you just escaped a terrible marriage. I won't pressure you. I glanced at our hands. What if I want to be ready? Lucas smiled. Then we'll build it together at your pace. No pressure. No expectations. Just two architects designing something new. We stood on Edmund's rooftop. The city spread beneath us. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a decade, hope. Not only for a career, but for a life. Edmund had given back my belief in myself. He had proven that those who love us sometimes must step aside and let us fall. Because that is how we learn. We can stand. The finest inheritance is not money or property. It is the conviction that you are capable of extraordinary things. The Montrose Fellowship launched 3 months after I took the helm. We received over 300 applications for 12 places. Lucas and I spent weeks reviewing portfolios. This one, I said, Lila Santos designing shelters for unhoused families with community gardens. She sees architecture as social change. She's young. Lucas noted. Only 22. No experience. Neither did I when Edmund believed in me. That's the point. The fellows arrived in September. Visibly nervous, I gathered them in the studio. Your presence isn't charity, it's investment. Edmund Montrose believed great architecture emerges from diverse perspectives. You'll work on real commissions alongside our teams. Your ideas will be heard, challenged, and sometimes built. Welcome to Montrose Atelier. Afterward, Lila approached. Hands shaking. Miss Montrose. Thank you. My family never understood why I wanted architecture. Let me guess. I smiled. They called it a nice hobby. Not a real career. Exactly. People who don't understand passion try to diminish it. My ex spent 10 years telling me my degree was a cute waste of time. Don't let anyone make you small for dreaming big. The program was intense. Fellows worked 40 hours a week on firm projects while advancing their own designs under mentorship. Some senior architects grumbled, but most embraced it. By November, Lila's community shelter proposal drew interest from a non-profit building in Roxbury. They want Montrose Atelier to lead with Lila as primary designer under supervision. This is too much responsibility. Lila whispered, You are an architect. I said, Act like one. The project became Lila's crucible. Critics questioned whether we were exploiting young talent. I addressed it in a digest interview. The Montrose Fellowship is not cheap labor. I said, It dismantles barriers that keep gifted people out of this field. Lila comes from a working-class family. Unpaid internships were not an option. Programs like ours ensure talent, not privilege, determine success. The feature ran with portraits of our fellows. Within a week, 3 other firms announced similar initiatives. You're changing the industry. Lucas said one evening, I'm doing what Edmund taught me, though he'd probably tease me for taking 10 years to figure it out. Lucas had become more than a business partner. We slipped into an easy rhythm late nights. Quick dinners. Conversations about everything. The pull between us was undeniable. But we kept it professional until the company holiday party in December. I arrived late, wind-tossed and genuinely happy after a site visit in Roxbury, where Lila presented with newfound authority. Lucas found me by the bar. "Tilosent. You missed the speeches," he teased. Let me guess, gratitude all around. An awkward joke. "And Melissa from accounting got tipsy too early." He laughed. In that order. The DJ shifted to something slow. Lucas offered his hand. "Dance with me." He hesitated. It felt like crossing a boundary. Then I remembered Edmund's journal and the mandate to build something new. One dance. He drew me close. We swayed without talking. "Ava," he murmured. "We promised to stay professional." We did. And I know you're still healing. I am. But I have to say this. I'm in love with you completely. Irrevocably. I will wait as long as you need. Or step back entirely. I just couldn't go another day without telling you. My heart raced. Part of me wanted to panic. A louder part, the one that had learned to take brave risks, wanted to leap. I'm terrified. I confessed. Damien trained me to doubt. What if I'm not ready? What if I break this? Then we figure it out together. He said, I'm not Damien. I don't want to control you. I love who you are now, the architect who can improvise a presentation and launch a fellowship. That person needs no fixing. I kissed him there on the dance floor. Impulsive, probably complicated, but right. When we pulled apart, the room went still. Then someone clapped. And suddenly everyone was applauding. I hid my face against Lucas's shoulder, laughing. Well, he grinned. So much for professionalism. Edmund said the best architecture comes from bold risks. I guess that applies to life, too. What happens next? Leave your predictions below, because this story was about to turn in ways no one anticipated. The relationship with Lucas altered everything and nothing. At the office, I remained CEO and senior partner. After hours, it was simply Ava and Lucas, learning each other. He met my hesitations with patience, never pushing, always steady when I needed grounding. Unlike Damien, who required me to stay small, Lucas seemed to expand alongside me. Tell me about your marriage, he asked one January night as we sat in the library, a month after we'd made things official. Snow falling beyond the windows. I tensed. Why? Because I can see you bracing for me to turn into him every time you accomplish something, he said gently. I want to understand what he did, so I never accidentally echo it. I had never shared the details with anyone, but Lucas's expression held only He made me feel like too much and never enough. I said, my degree was cute but impractical. My ideas were hobbyist nonsense. When I lit up about architecture, he called it obsessive. When I was quiet, he said I was dull. I couldn't win. That wasn't about you. Lucas replied. That was about his need to keep you insecure. I know that now, he admitted. But for 10 years I believed him. I kept shrinking and shrinking. Spoiler, it didn't work. He still cheated. Lucas took my hand. Ava, you're the most extraordinary person I've ever met. Your passion isn't too much. It's everything. When you talk about buildings, your whole face brightens. The day you walked into that boardroom and refused to apologize for existing, I knew you were going to change everything. I kissed him, overwhelmed by the difference between being celebrated and being erased. I love you. I said my first time saying it. I'm still learning how to do this without fear. But I love you. We'll figure it out together, he said. That's the difference. We're a team. In February, Architectural Digest published their feature not only about the fellowship, but about my arc from dumpster diving to leading a storied firm, Edmund's decade of waiting, and the transformation of Montrose Atelier. The response was a flood media requests. Invitations to speak at schools. Clients knocking. My Instagram picked up 50,000 followers in a week. Visibility. However, drew unwelcome attention. Damien called on a Tuesday. I was in a meeting when his name flashed on my phone. I'd never changed the contact, something I should probably unpack with a therapist. I ignored it. He called again. Then texted, saw the digest piece. Impressive. We should talk. I showed Lucas, who frowned. Block him. I want to know what he wants first. The next message arrived. I made mistakes. I see that now. Maybe coffee closure. I laughed without humor. He wants back in now that I'm successful. You're not meeting him, Lucas said. God. No. But I am replying. Itipet Damian. You spent 10 years convincing me I was worthless. You took everything and told me no one would want a broke homeless woman. You were wrong then. And you're irrelevant now. Do not contact me again. Send. Block. Delete. Relief washed through me. How do you feel? Lucas asked, pulling me close. Free. He doesn't get to rewrite history. He made his choices. I've moved far beyond him. But Damien wasn't done. He messaged Lila on LinkedIn, claiming to be a friend. She immediately sent screenshots. Some guy named Damien Cole says he's your ex and wants to congratulate you. I told him I don't pass messages to my boss from strangers. Was that okay? That was perfect. I replied. If he reaches out again, block him. His final attempt arrived via his attorney, a letter requesting a meeting to discuss business opportunities and reconciliation. Lucas read it. Jaw tight. He wants you to invest in his company. He's trying to use your success to buoy his failing venture. Of course, I said. He spent our marriage withdrawing from me. The audacity is almost impressive. I asked Violet to draft a response. Montrose has no interest in any professional or personal relationship with Mr. Damien Sol. Further contact will be considered harassment and will prompt legal action. The calls stopped, but the rumors started. A former friend called with a warning. Damien was telling people I had stolen Edmund's firm and manipulated a dying man. He was trying to undermine me. I expected anger. Instead, he felt pity. He was so threatened, he needed a story where I was the villain. Let him talk. I told Lucas. Anyone who knows me knows the truth. The gossip reached Edmund's circle, and I received an invitation to a gallery opening from Beatriz Alvarez, an art dealer close to my uncle. People are saying things. I'd like to hear your side. I went with Lucas. The space was filled with architectural photography, several of Edmund's buildings. You look just like your uncle when he was young, Beatrice said warmly. Same fire in your eyes. I've heard questions about the will. About Edmund, I said. She smiled. Darling. Jealous, people, gossip. Edmund spoke of you constantly in his final years. He was proud even when you weren't speaking. He showed me your notebooks once and said you'd outshine him. By evening's end, I'd met a dozen of Edmund's closest friends. They shared stories of how he tracked my life from a respectful distance, planned this inheritance for years, and knew I had to find my way out on my own. Your ex is spreading rumors because he's threatened, one architect told me bluntly. Edmund always said a person's character is revealed by how they react to someone else's success. Damien is revealing himself. Driving home, Lucas asked. Do you regret any of it, the marriage? The lost years I thought hard. I regret the time. I regret believing his lies. But not the path it led here. If I hadn't hit rock bottom, I might never have appreciated standing on solid ground, or I'd be unbearable about it. Actually, I might be unbearable anyway. Lucas laughed. You're not unbearable. You're confident. There's a difference. Edmund would approve, I said. He always claimed false modesty is just another kind of lie. Spring brought fresh challenges. The Roxbury shelter neared completion, and Lila's design drew attention from city planners who wanted to replicate it. Success invited scrutiny. Adrian Vale, CEO of a rival firm, began a whisper campaign. We were exploiting fellows. Our growth was unsustainable. I was riding Edmund's reputation. Classic insecure competitor playbook. I could have ignored it. Lucas advised as much, noting that engagement confers legitimacy, but I was tired of being underestimated. When Adrian published an op-ed in a major journal attacking the fellowship, I responded publicly. My essay, Building Bridges: Why Architecture Needs New Voices, laid out the fellowship's structure, compensation, and mentorship model. I confronted privilege head-on. Adrian had inherited his firm from his father. I didn't condemn his advantage, but I did condemn yanking the ladder up behind him. The question wasn't whether programs like the Montrose Fellowship were exploitative. It was whether our industry could evolve beyond nepotism to serve the communities we design for. The piece went viral. Schools shared it. Young architects praised it. Adrian looked like what he was, a privileged man rattled by change. Edmund's friends rallied. Beatriz published a thoughtful defense. Other architects added their support until the noise drowned out his criticism. With the attention came an unexpected offer. A streaming platform approached about a documentary on transformative architecture, featuring the Roxbury shelter, the fellowship, and my story. Major exposure. Our marketing director said, but it means opening your personal life to scrutiny. I looked to Lucas. You'll follow your instincts, he said, but think carefully about what you're willing to share. Your story is powerful and personal. That night we talked it through. If I do this, I said, people will ask about my marriage and why Edmund and I stopped speaking. I'd have to discuss Damien, which means speaking publicly about emotional abuse. I know, Lucas said quietly. I don't want to give him that much real estate in my story. He already stole 10 years. As I said it, I realized Damien wasn't the story. Edmund was. My resilience was. Damien was merely the obstacle I had overcome. I'll do it, I decided. But on my terms. They film what I allow. This is architectural journalism with emotional depth, not reality TV. The crew arrived in May. For 2 months, they filmed everything: the Roxbury opening where Lila's speech made me cry, fellows presenting to real clients, board meetings marked by respect instead of power plays. They interviewed Edmund's friends. Helen spoke about watching him follow my life from afar, the pain of seeing me struggle. They asked about Damien. In Edmund's studio, I kept it simple. I married someone who needed me small to feel big. He saw my education as a threat. The divorce destroyed me financially, but freed me emotionally. Sometimes losing everything is how you get yourself back. When they pressed for specifics, I smiled and shook my head. Details don't matter. What matters is that I survived and built something beautiful from the wreckage. That's the story. Damien gets to be a footnote, and even that's generous. The network fast-tracked the film for the fall lineup, hoping to ride the fellowship's momentum. When it aired in August, just 4 months after filming began, the response was overwhelming. Students wrote about family pressure. Women thanked me for discussing emotional abuse without sensationalizing it. The fellowship received more than 1,000 applications, and Damien, predictably, called again. I was at dinner with Lucas when an unknown number lit my phone. I answered out of curiosity. Ava. It's Damien. I froze. Lucas took my hand. How did you get this number? I saw the documentary. You made me look like a villain. I never said your name. I replied. If you see yourself in my account, that says more about you than me. It's called introspection. You should try it. People know. It's me, your friends. Our old neighbors? You're ruining my reputation. I laughed. I haven't thought about you in months. I don't care about your reputation. I told my truth. If that makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself why. The delusion is honestly impressive. I want a public apology, a statement that I wasn't abusive and the divorce was mutual. No, I said, standing and stepping outside. Listen carefully. You spent 10 years convincing me I was worthless. You took everything in our divorce. You mocked my education. Now that I have built something extraordinary, you want to rewrite history. I don't owe you anything, not my silence. Not my comfort. Not 1 second of my time. You are a footnote in my story. Lose my number. Lose my name. And lose any hope of relevance. I hung up and called Violet. He's demanding a public apology. I need a cease and desist. If he contacts me or anyone connected to me again, I'm pursuing legal action. Consider it done, she said. And Ava, I'm proud of you. Back at the table, Lucas waited with my wine and a proud smile. You, okay, I'm perfect, I said. He tried to make me small again, and I refused. Dat var incredible. A woman at the next table leaned over. I'm sorry for eavesdropping, but I saw the documentary. Thank you for your honesty. My daughter is in a relationship like that. Your story might give her courage. I handed her my card. Have her call my office? I'm happy to remind anyone they're not alone. As we left, Lucas slipped an arm around me. You're changing lives not just through buildings but through your story. That's Edmund's real legacy architecture, as a way to transform people, not just skylines. The partnership vote took place in October. Exactly 1 year after I'd taken over, Lucas had been senior partner, but the board needed to formalize his elevation to co-CEO. I expected resistance. Instead, the vote was unanimous, and then came a surprise. Before we adjourn, board member Nora Pierce said, "There is another matter. The board has received an acquisition offer for Montrose Atelier. Iwan still." What? She slid a document across the table. Adrian Vale's firm wants to acquire us. He's offering $300 million for a full buyout. His firm has been losing major clients to us. And after we secured 3 significant international government contracts this year, he sees acquisition as his best path forward. Given your 51% ownership, the decision is yours. $300 million. I would personally clear over $150 million. Financial security for life. This is a trap, Lucas said immediately. Adrian has been undermining us for months. The offer is legitimate, Nora said. I suspect he wants to eliminate a competitor and absorb our methods. I read the terms carefully. A complete acquisition meant Adrian would own the name, the projects, the fellowship. He could dissolve everything and erase Edmund's legacy. No, I said without hesitation. Ava, that's a great deal of money, Nora said gently. You should at least consider it. I don't need to. Edmund didn't leave me this firm, so I could sell it to someone who embodies everything he resisted. The answer is no. The board exchanged glances. Then Nora smiled. That is exactly what we hoped you'd say. Edmund included a provision in his will we couldn't disclose until you'd served 1 year as CEO and faced a substantial acquisition offer. She produced another document. If you reject any such offer, you receive an additional trust. He established $30 million unrestricted for understanding that some legacies cannot be bought. I sat back, stunned. He tested me. Even after death? Nora said. He wanted to be sure you valued the mission over the money. Many would have sold. Edmund needed to know you wouldn't. Lucas watched me carefully. How do you feel? I considered. A year ago, I'd have called it manipulative. Now I see it differently. He wasn't controlling me. He was proving to me what I can do. He knew me better than I knew myself. A year ago, I might have sold. Now this company isn't just his legacy, it's mine. And it's not for sale. The motion to name Lucas co-CEO passed unanimously. As the meeting ended, Nora drew me aside. Edmund left you one more thing. She handed me a velvet box with instructions to deliver it after I'd passed the acquisition test. Inside lay a simple band etched with architectural blueprints and a note in Edmund's handwriting, Ava. If you're reading this, you've passed my final test. This ring belonged to my wife, your great-aunt Evelyn Montrose, whom you never met. She was an architect too, among the first women to practice in the 1950s. She faced barriers you cannot imagine, but she never compromised her vision. When she died, I promised to give this to someone worthy of her legacy. That someone is you. Build bravely, live boldly, and never let anyone make you small again. I'm proud of you. E. I slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Edmund had planned everything. That evening, Lucas found me in the studio. Evelyn's ring catching the light as I looked out over Boston. Penny for your thoughts, Edmund, orchestrated all of it. I said, the inheritance, the board gauntlet, the acquisition offer, every piece mapped to prove I was who he believed I could be. Are you angry? No. Grateful. He didn't just hand me a company, he gave me trials that forced me to become the architect, the leader, the person I was meant to be. Without those tests, I might have doubted myself forever. Lucas wrapped his arms around me from behind. You know what I think Edmund knew you'd pass every test, because you already possess something. Adrian and men like Damien will never understand. What's that? The ability to value people over profit. To see potential inside problems. To build up instead of tear down. That's why I fell in love with you. Not because you're Edmund's heir, but because you see the world as a place worth improving. I love you. Too. I said, you've been my partner through all of it. Speaking of partnership, Lucas said, voice unsteady. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it, an elegant ring with a small diamond catching the light. Ava Montrose. I'm not asking because of a test or a timeline. I'm asking because every day with you is better than the last, and I want a lifetime of days watching you change the world. Will you marry me? I looked at the ring. At Lucas. At the studio Edmund had built in the hope I'd return. A year ago, I'd been married to someone who diminished me. Now, someone who celebrated me was asking for forever. Yes, I said, tears spilling. Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring beside Evelyn's band. They looked perfect together, old legacy and new beginning. Should we tell people tonight? I asked. Actually, Lucas said, grinning as he pulled out his phone. I already asked Helen to chill champagne. She's been rooting for this since you moved in. We headed downstairs to find Helen beaming, champagne already on ice. About time, she said. Mr. Edmund would be overjoyed. He probably planned this, too, I said, laughing through tears. He probably even left a letter about how Lucas is perfect for me. Actually, Helen replied, walking toward Edmund's study. He did. She returned with an envelope addressed to both of us. Dated the week before Edmund died. Lucas and Ava. If you're reading this together, my plan worked even better than I hoped. Lucas, you have been like a son. Ava, you have always been like a daughter. I cannot imagine better leaders for my firm or better partners for each other. Build something beautiful together. And please do not name any children Edmund. That name ends with me. All my love. E. We laughed and cried, toasting the man who believed in us when we doubted ourselves. The engagement announcement rippled through the architecture world. Architectural Digest asked for an exclusive. Design magazines wanted portraits. Even Edmund's old rivals sent unexpectedly gracious congratulations. But the loudest response came from Damien. Of course it did. Violet phoned me on a Friday morning in November, her voice taut with controlled anger. Damien filed a lawsuit. He claims you used marital assets to invest in Montrose Atelier and that he's entitled to part of your inheritance. I laughed. I was broke when we divorced. He took everything. With what funds was I supposed to invest? He's arguing that the architectural knowledge you developed during the marriage, while he supported you financially, constitutes a marital asset that contributed to your current success. It's absurd. But it's meant to be disruptive and expensive. Lucas, listening on speaker, looked furious. He's doing this because she's engaged. This is spite, not law. Exactly. Violet said, which is why we're going to crush it. Ava, I need documentation from your marriage showing Damien actively prevented you from working emails, texts, anything where he discouraged your career. I thought back over those 10 years. I kept journals. I said, I never showed him. But I recorded everything: his comments about my degree, the times he sabotaged interviews, the ways he isolated me. Perfect. Violet said, get them to me today. We're filing a countersuit for emotional distress, defamation, and harassment. Damien is about to learn that targeting you was the worst decision he could make. Finding the journals proved harder than expected. They were boxed up in storage I hadn't opened since moving to Boston. Lucas came with me. As we sifted through crates, I found the notebooks beneath old textbooks. Listen to this. I read from an entry 5 years into the marriage. Damien told a colleague at dinner that my architecture degree was a hobby, cute but useless. When I tried to correct him, he laughed and said I was too sensitive. Later, he told me I had embarrassed him. I apologized. I whispered, God. Lucas. I apologized for existing. His jaw tightened. He systematically tried to destroy your confidence. He tried. I said, he didn't succeed. I'm still here, and he's the one filing frivolous suits. The journals painted a devastating record. 10 years of emotional manipulation in my handwriting. Damien criticizing my appearance. Intellect. Dreams. Damien losing my licensing exam registration. Damien scheduling trips on top of interviews I had arranged. Damien repeating that no one else would love me. Violet reviewed the materials with grim satisfaction. This isn't just evidence, it's a roadmap of abuse. His lawsuit is going to backfire spectacularly. We filed the countersuit within a week. Damien's legal team immediately tried to settle, offering to withdraw his claim if we abandoned ours. Absolutely not. I told Violet. He attacked me when I was finally happy. He tried to undermine my engagement. My success? My peace. He doesn't walk away without consequences. You understand this becomes public. She cautioned. Divorce records. Allegations of abuse. Everything will appear in the court file. Good. I said. Let people see who he is. I'm finished protecting his reputation at the cost of my truth. The preliminary hearing was set for December. I entered the courtroom with Lucas at my side. Helen just behind us. Absolutely certain I was doing the right thing. Damien was already seated with his attorneys, looking confident until the judge read our counterclaims. Mr. Cole, the judge said, these allegations are serious emotional abuse, financial control, deliberate career sabotage. Your attorney has framed this as a simple property dispute. Damien Slavier stood. Your Honor, these accusations are exaggerated. My client supported Montrose financially throughout their marriage. Violet rose, smooth as glass. Supported her or imprisoned her. Your Honor, we have extensive documentation that Mr. Cole systematically prevented Ms. Montrose from pursuing her profession. He discouraged employment, sabotaged applications, and used financial control to maintain dominance. That is not support. That is calculated abuse. She presented the journals, emails, and testimony from our marriage counselor. By the time she finished, Damien looked pale and diminished. The judge was not sympathetic. Mr. Cole, these documents suggest your lawsuit is retaliatory, not substantive. Ms. Montrose received her inheritance after the divorce was final. You have no legal claim. Moreover, to assert that her education is marital property, while you actively prevented her from using it, is both legally frivolous and morally troubling. Damien's lawyer tried to respond, but the judge cut him off. Motion dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Cole, you are fortunate Ms. Montrose is not pursuing criminal harassment charges. Consider this outcome a gift and move on. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I had expected them. Ms. Montrose, how do you feel about the ruling vindicated? I said, my ex-husband spent 10 years telling me I was worthless. He took everything in our divorce. When I rebuilt my life, he tried to take that too. Today a judge confirmed what I already knew. Damien Cole is a small man who cannot abide strong women. I'm done granting him any power over my story. Will you pursue further legal action? No. He isn't worth my time or energy. I have buildings to design, a firm to run, and a wedding to plan. Damien is irrelevant to my future, and truthfully, he always was. The clip went viral. By evening, other women stepped forward with similar accounts of Damien's control. His business began hemorrhaging clients. His reputation imploded, not because of anything I did, but because of who he had always been. Finally exposed. That night, Lucas found me on Montrose House's rooftop, the city lights glittering. How are you really feeling? Free? I said. Finally. Completely. He can't touch me anymore. His opinion doesn't matter. His existence doesn't shape my happiness. Edmund would be proud. Lucas said, you turned pain into power. That was always the point. I answered. Every test, every challenge aimed at this moment. At understanding that I'm defined not by those who tried to break me, but by how I rebuilt. So, what's next? Lucas asked. You've faced your demons, grown the company, kicked off a movement. What does Ava Montrose do for an encore? I pulled out a sketch I'd been shaping. I want to use the $30 million from Edmund's final trust for something ambitious, a nationwide public architecture initiative. Libraries, community centers, civic spaces designed with the same care usually reserved for luxury projects. Architecture that serves everyone. Lucas studied the drawings. A nationwide initiative that's audacious. Edmund always said the best architecture should be democratic, that beauty and innovation shouldn't be luxuries. This is how I honor him, and also make my own mark. Our mark. Lucas corrected gently. Partners. Remember, partners in everything. I said, kissing him. Tears bright with joy. The wedding took place in April. Exactly 18 months after I climbed out of that dumpster. We kept it relatively small, about 100 guests in the rooftop garden Edmund designed decades ago. Lila was my maid of honor, newly graduated from the fellowship and hired full-time at Montrose Atelier. She cried when I asked, "You changed my life." She said, "Not just my career, my sense of what's possible." "You did that." I told her. I just opened a door. Beatriz Alvarez walked me down the aisle, Edmund's closest friend. Standing in as the family I chose. Helen sobbed through the vows. Clutching a handkerchief Edmund had left for this exact occasion, Lucas's vows were simple and perfect. Ava, you taught me that partnership means honoring each other's strength, not competing with it. You've made me a better architect and a better man. I promise to see you, to challenge you, and to believe you're capable of the impossible. Mine were harder to say without crying. Lucas. 18 months ago, I was sure no one would want me, that I was broken. You didn't just prove me wrong. You made me realize I was never broken. I was waiting for someone who saw my cracks as places where light could enter. Thank you for being my partner in every sense, and for loving me exactly as I am. We danced beneath string lights, surrounded by people who had witnessed my transformation. The documentary crew filmed a brief epilogue, the final chapter of an award-winning series about architecture, redemption, and second chances. As the evening faded, Lucas drew me into the studio. On the drafting table sat a leather portfolio I didn't recognize. Edmund left this with Beatriz. Lucas said, with instructions to give it to us on our wedding day. Inside were dozens of sketches, designs Edmund had created but never built: community centers, schools, affordable housing, social architecture for those the world tends to overlook. A note read, Ava and Lucas, these are the dreams I ran out of time to realize. Now they are yours. Build them boldly for people who need proof that someone sees their worth. Architecture is not only the making of beautiful spaces, it is the making of spaces where beautiful lives are possible. I love you both. Now stop reading and go dance with your wife. Lucas. We laughed through tears. Edmund's voice so clear. Then returned to the celebration, to the life we were building. The Public Architecture Initiative launched the following year. Using Edmund's trust and additional funding from Montrose's profits, we began designing and constructing libraries, community hubs, and civic spaces across the country. Each project wove sustainable systems, local artists, and community input into the fabric architecture as collaboration. Lila led the design for the Philadelphia Community Library, her first commission as lead architect. I attended the opening and watched her articulate her vision to the press. Architecture saved my life, she told reporters, not just as a job, but as proof I could build something meaningful. Ava Montrose taught me that buildings are more than structures. They are promises that better futures are possible. I hugged her afterward. Edmund would have loved this, and he would have loved you. I know, because he loved me enough for both of us. Thank you for proving his faith and potential was right. Montrose Atelier grew steadily over the next few years, not chasing prestige, but choosing projects aligned with our values. We designed schools in underserved neighborhoods, affordable housing that did not sacrifice beauty, public spaces that stitched communities together. Awards followed, but what mattered was the lives changed. Damien faded into obscurity, his company failing, his reputation eroded by his own behavior and by multiple women who came forward with similar stories. I heard the updates from former acquaintances and felt nothing, no triumph, no vindication, just indifference. He had become what he always was: irrelevant. 5 years after taking the helm, I was invited to give the commencement address at my architecture school. I stood at the podium, facing graduates who looked like the person I once had been. When I graduated, I said, I had a degree, a dream, and complete certainty about my future. Within a week, I abandoned it all for someone who needed me small. For 10 years, I disappeared into a life that wasn't mine. Here is what I learned: you cannot truly lose yourself. You can misplace yourself for a time, but your essential self waits for you to remember. When I finally left that marriage, I had nothing, no money, no home, no confidence, but I still had my education, my passion, and a great uncle who believed I was worth waiting for. Some of you will walk straight paths. Others will detour through darkness first. Both journeys are valid. Remember this: you are architects. You see potential in empty spaces. You know that foundations must be strong before any structure can rise. Apply that vision to your own lives. Build yourselves carefully, honestly, courageously, and when life tries to tear you down, remember you are trained to reconstruct from ruins. The applause thundered. More meaningful were the students who came afterward to share their stories and thank me for my honesty. If this story resonates, I told them, follow along for more about transformation, resilience, and the power of refusing to stay small when the world tries to diminish you. That evening, I returned to the estate where this chapter began. Lucas worked in the studio on concepts for a Detroit children's museum. Helen had dinner waiting. I climbed to the rooftop, the garden Edmund imagined for my homecoming. The city spread below, raised by people with audacity and grit. I thought about the woman who climbed from a dumpster 18 months earlier, convinced she had lost everything. I wished I could tell her what was coming. More than that, I wished I could tell her the essential truth. She already had everything she needed. She just needed time and space to remember. My phone buzzed. A text from Lila just landed the commission for the San Francisco Community Center. Your blueprint is changing the country. Thank you for believing in me. I smiled and typed back. Thank you for proving Edmund was right about potential. You're going to outshine us all someday. Lucas joined me on the roof. What are you thinking about everything? I said, where I was, where I am, where we go next. And where is that, he asked. I turned to the man who had chosen to build beside me. Wherever we design next together, together. He agreed. In that word lived everything: partnership, trust, love, and the understanding that the finest architecture, whether buildings or lives, emerges from people who refuse to dim each other's light. Edmund had given me more than wealth or property. He had given me the gift of hitting rock bottom hard enough to recognize what solid ground feels like. He had shown me that those who love us sometimes let us struggle because they believe we are strong enough to save ourselves. And I had. I saved myself, rebuilt stronger, and forged a legacy that had nothing to do with inheriting success and everything to do with becoming who I was always meant to be. The city lights glittered like blueprints waiting to be filled with purpose. Tomorrow, I would return to the office to projects and problems and the beautiful complexity of making spaces that change lives. But tonight I stood on Edmund's rooftop with Lucas beside me, wearing Evelyn's ring next to my engagement ring, and finally understood the lesson. My great-uncle spent years teaching me you can strip a person of almost everything, but not of the capacity to rebuild. And when they rise from the ashes, they do not return to who they were, they become something better, truer, unstoppable. I was no longer Edmund's protégé. I was not Damien's casualty. I was not even just Ava Montrose, CEO. I was an architect not only of buildings, but of second chances and possible futures, and of lives founded on the belief that everyone deserves room to grow into their best selves. That was the inheritance that mattered.